The smoke that drifted above the black water that night tasted of rusted iron and burnt cedar, of secrets too long hidden and vows too long broken. It coiled upward into a star-speckled sky, mingling with the cold salt spray, as if the gods themselves meant to scour the crimson from King's Landing stones. In the corridors of the Red Keep, the torchlight trembled, for the hallways still remembered screams. Aerys II Targaryen, last to wear the Conqueror's crown, lay in a puddle of his own cooling blood before the Iron Throne, fingers curled like talons around an empty air that would never again heed his madness. Beyond the shattered doors of the throne room, lords and knights quarreled in hushed tones, their faces flaring red in torchlight, pale in moonlight, yet always masking the same twin hungers, fear and ambition. Tywin Lannister's crimson lions camped in every courtyard, and their gold-trimmed banners rippled in the night wind as if they alone claimed dominion. But the lions had come too late for true rescue, too soon for easy peace. Robert Baratheon's warhammer still rang in nightly songs along the Trident, and every raven's wing echoed of rebellion. No tale had ended. Instead, 100 newer ones began, each more tangled than the last. Grand Maester Pycelle, beard perfumed with mint against the stench of smoke, bent over parchment in the council chamber and whispered of precedence. By every law of succession yet unrevoked, he wheezed, the nearest male of the Conqueror's blood, yet living, is Maester AEMON of the Night's Watch. The name fluttered through the gallery like an errant moth, unexpected, delicate, yet stubbornly alive. Some scoffed, a blind old man amid frozen stones, and others looked away, weighing what hope might spring from one whose life had been vow and duty, not sword and claim. Yet the message was written. 3 riders spurred through the gate before dawn, cloaked in black to veil crimson stains on saddlebags that carried the shattered seal of Aerys' final decree. They galloped hard for Maidenpool, for the King's Road beyond, for that long wall of ancient snow no rebellion could melt. As hooves drummed northward, raven wings beat against winter's edge. The realm had sent for an oathbreaker, or savior. Sometimes in Westeros, they were the same. Castle Black knew silence deeper than any crypt, a hush packed into every mortar line of ice itself. Maester AEMON Targaryen, hands gnarled by age and candle fire, traced raised letters over a fresh parchment and listened to the watch outside lift the dawn's report. Wind hissed through arrow luces in the towers, and the walls cold pressed against him more keenly each year. In silence he thought of brothers long dead, of dragons that were bones in Valyrian ruins, of vows spoken when his eyes still saw color and luster. A raven pecked at his sleeve. A second perched on his shoulder, muttering nonsense syllables that somehow sounded like distant bells. Then boots slapped the stair. 3 sets, urgent, breath misting in the chill. The parchment the riders thrust into his hand rustled as though alive, hot with tidings of fire even in that frost-bound stronghold. Pycelle's wax shattered, the seal of the hand cracked. Beneath, a half-charred ribbon of royal red that smelled faintly of smoke and Kingslayer steel. Aemon's fingerpads followed the words as another would trace holy scripture. Aerys is dead. Rhaegar, too, upon the Trident. A realm in peril calls its rightful king. Come south, claim what blood and law decree. He laughed then, a soft, brittle sound, shards of a memory. I am ringed by ice, he murmured, and by an oath no raven can untie. But ravens had carried heavier burdens, the weight of winter, the weight of all the lives men chose for one another. Outside the small window, the sky was painfully clear, stars scattered like pale dragon's eggs across velvet. If prophecy yet breathed, it breathed in riddles, usually the sort that bound fathers to sons, uncles to nephews, kingdoms to dust. Yet this summons cut through every riddle with evident need. A realm teetering would have its stabilizing hand, or else fall into a chaos deeper than dragonflame. He summoned Lord Commander Jormont, who entered with grim respect. No law of men allowed a brother to set aside the black, yet no law of gods had foreseen the end of dragons before their fire had burned out. We are the shield that guards the realms of men, AEMON whispered, palms warm around a clay-cup Mormont, pressed upon him. Perhaps sometimes that shield must bear a crown, if only so the realms can endure unbroken. Mormont said nothing for a long moment. Outside, the wind rattled chains and rattled souls. If you must go, he growled, I will feel it in every breath. The old maester answered, though tears would not form in sightless eyes. Yet I go not for myself. I go that there may still be a realm left for the wall to guard. Naduis. Within 2 days, the ranging party prepared. 6 seasoned rangers sworn to secrecy, 2 black horses for each man. They rode not as brothers of the watch, but as silent shadows slipping southward down the King's Road with no heraldry. AEMON's limbs ached from the saddle before the first day's dusk, yet he kept his posture steady, listening to every crunch of hooves, every wistful call of a lone wolf under the waxing moon. Riverlands lay soaked in recent blood. Burnt manors curled like blackened fists beside fields trampled by war horses. The smell of harvest once promised had given way to carrion. Small folk huddled in church ruins where Septon's songs had long since faded. There they spoke of Robert's victories, of Targaryen princes cut down, of dragons extinct and lions ascendant. But they also whispered of a blind old man riding under quiet guard, whose very name felt like a sigh of relief. AEMON. Some rolled the word on their tongues as though tasting an herb long out of season, sweet but distant. Others feared the thought, if a Targaryen yet lived to claim the throne, war might only widen. On the heights of the Red Fork, the ranging party paused. There, banners caught sunset's fire. The crown stag of Baratheon in black silhouette upon gold, flapping from makeshift stakes, driven into mud still wet with riverland tears. The war lines hardened daily. Rumor said Robert Baratheon marched on King's Landing at last, vengeance in his warhammer, and a list of names he meant to carve upon the halls of every lord who failed him. Yet rumor also insisted Tywin Lannister held the city already, and that Queen Rhaella, heavy with child, was spirited to Dragonstone beneath cover of night. Which rumor sang the truer tune? South or north of any rumor lay the same truth. Chaos multiplied where crowns found no heads to rest upon. AEMON's rangers kept wide of stag banners, slipping through weald and copse. By twilight they crossed into territory under Tully rule, though rule was a shaky term these days. AEMON felt each mile as a plucked harp, string across brittle ribs. Thoughts strung themselves in unending succession. Memory of brothers Daeron and Aerys, dead in youth. Of Prince Duncan, who wed for love and broke for duty. Of Rhaegar, who'd sung songs of rubies, and somehow bled them upon riverstones. Did the blood of the dragon still carry warmth enough to mend a realm he barely recognized? They reached Harrenhal's husk before dawn 7 days later, seeking safe passage documents rumored to linger in a ruined maester's tower. Harren the Black's castle moaned in every gust, as if the ghosts of dragonfire still gnawed on stone and sorrow. AEMON took a moment there beneath the tower's gnarled silhouette. Here, he whispered, the first dragon slew a king who thought stone might thwart fire. Let us hope fire yet remembers how to guard, not only destroy. Rangers fetched what parchment survived, stamped by rock and rose and stag alike, none more recent than a fortnight. Each bore crisp black wax claiming safe conduct for small folk rescued from the flames consuming Crown Land's villages. The rangers bartered fresh water from a half-burnt granary, left coin enough to rebuild beams, though they doubted coin would matter where fear had eaten hope. Still, AEMON insisted. Gold cannot heal a house, he admitted, but a gesture may yet heal a heart, and gestures sometimes proved the best mortar between lives, fracturing like ice. King's Landing in those days stank of rotted flesh and lavender, of hastily dumped pitch and hastier dumped corpses. Lannister soldiers lined the streets, yet their eyes flitted always to rooftops, to shadows where vengeful ghosts of pyromancers might hide. Things still smoldered within the city's bones, though the worst of the blaze had died with Aerys' mad shriek. The Iron Throne waited beneath vaults, now draped in cloth of gold, though the hall's blackened marble still bore embers in its cracks. Some rumored Jaime Lannister had tried to scrub the steel steps clean of blood, yet each morning new stains bled through. Within Maegor's holdfast, the small council, what fragments remained, argued over every scant crumb of power. Pycelle reigned amid musty scrolls, while Varys fluttered like a painted moth, scenting the room for secrets. Tywin's voice seldom rose above a growl, but his green eyes blazed beneath candlelight. The realm needed a face, a voice, a dragon's crown, and Tywin meant that face to be agreeable, or at least malleable. He cared little if the head beneath the crown shook with age, so long as his own lion's paw held the quill. When Maester Aemon's party slipped through the Roserat Gate, dusk painted the sky with bruised peach and crimson. They bore no banners, yet whispers rippled faster than wildfire. A Targaryen, alive, half toward his sept for prayer, half toward the throne for coronation. That evening, small folk pressed along cobbles, craning for sight of a glimmering dragon. What they saw was an ancient man upon a small gray horse, blind white eyes catching no light, yet head lifted high as if reading the city's wounds by scent alone. Tywin received him in the solar above the throne room, flanked by ready-cloaked guards. Aemon felt the man's arrogance like heat from a forge as soon as the door opened, but he bowed politely. As one who has outlived fiercer lions, Lord Tywin, the maester, greeted in cracked Valyrian. It seems fire still clings to these stones. Tywin's voice was velvet-lined steel. King's Landing burns or prospers at the whim of its ruler. If we agree, his grace may find the city most hospitable. He paused, letting the honorific linger like date. Shall I call you your grace? Aemon fingered the chain of black iron about his own throat, each link a vow forged in the fires of the wall. If the realm has need enough, I will answer to the call, but know that a crown sits easier on one who serves, not one who rules alone. Service is commendable, Tywin said, but rulership is necessary. The stag marches south, the wolf howls in the north. The Martell nurse their vengeance, and my banners must answer to someone, preferably someone stable. Stable, Aemon echoed, a curious word for a world where dragons once shadowed every field. He lifted his face toward an unseen window. Tell me, Lord Tywin, does the city still remember dragons, or only the fires they left behind? Damus, there is no distinction, Tywin replied, and dragons alone will not win you this war. You need gold, swords, and bread. Those I can provide. All I ask is peace afterward. Peace is never simply after, Aemon whispered, but let us speak of it, for the sake of every hungry child who wonders which banner will bring the next sack. So the two spoke long into evening, while ravens resettled along scorched rooftops. At dawn the next day, a council, greater than any since before the usurper's war, assembled. Lannister and Tyrell, remaining Arryn envoys, a pair of Frey sons, a captive Royce, several minor Stormlord bannermen, rumored to have softened in their zeal, even a Braavosi envoy smelling of salt and spice. In their midst, the blind maester stood in robes of deep Targaryen black, the only color upon him the red scabbed sigil of a three-headed dragon, embroidered small at his heart. When asked if he would claim the crown, he did not speak at once. Instead, he lifted a withered hand and recited the Night's Watch oath, every word resonant in that hush. I am the sword in the darkness. Voices quaked, some in reverence, some in scorn. I pledge my life and honor to the Night's Watch, for this night and all the nights to come. Then silence, heavier than steel. Finally, he said, I speak these words so you may know that breaking them costs me more than any of you can weigh in coin or crown. Yet if the realm demands it, if my blood may buy one sunrise more for peace, then I will bear that cost. He exhaled, not as Aerys did through madness, nor Rhaegar through dreams undone, but through patient stewardship, guided by counsel, by a realm weary of war. Some cheered, more exhaled relief. Tywin's expression never wavered, yet his shoulders eased a fraction. The Braavosi envoy smiled, as though collecting interest already due. Yet before words of coronation could be sealed, the great doors thundered wide. The caked riders poured in, stag banners drooping but defiant. Their heads strode Robert Baratheon, beard wild with wind, eyes aflame. He towered above lesser men, warhammer thudding against marble like a judge's gavel. Sweat and steel mingled with the smoky incense of the hall. Every Lannister guard's hand gripped pommel or spear. My claim is forged of rebellion and rivers of Targaryen blood, Robert roared. I will not yield it to a maester, dragon or not. Step aside, old man, lest you die as your kin did. AEMON lifted blind eyes toward the voice, calm as lake ice at dawn. If all my kin had died this night, he answered softly, the realm would have only cold ashes for comfort. Yet I stand here not to cling to blood, but to mend what blood has ruined. Put aside your hammer, Robert Baratheon. The realm is broken. Will you shatter it utterly for pride, or will you help rebuild it? Now, Robert's knuckles whitened around the haft. What rebuild comes from a Targaryen's tongue? He spat on the floor, yet his eyes flicked to Tywin, to Varys, to the gold-swathed courtiers, measuring odds like coppers in a purse. A rebuild that begins with a feast instead of a funeral, AEMON said, voice trembling more from fatigue than fear. One that leaves a place at the table for every house, stag, lion, trout, and wolf alike. One that does not burn cities with wildfire, nor carve infants from cradle. Will you help me host such a feast, Lord Robert? The Giant of Storm's End stared as though seeing for the first time, not a Targaryen, but an old man barely clinging to life, yet clinging still to hope. Long heartbeats passed while each lord in the hall found his hand sweating upon sword, hilt, or quill alike. Then Robert lowered the hammerhead to the floor. Its thud echoed like the toll of a bronze bell across the Seven Kingdoms. Speak your terms, he growled, and so began the slow turning of gears that might grind war into uneasy peace, might exchange swords for ink, at least for a season. Ravens scattered that day not with tidings of conquest but of parley. Small folk whispered to one another that the realm's new king was very old and very blind, yet he saw what no sighted lord dared. The cost of endless vengeance. Dragons were gone, but perhaps wisdom could still warm the land. Weeks passed before a coronation, not for lack of will, but for careful stitching of torn banners into one overworn cloak. The realm might yet wrap around itself. AEMON presided from a plain oak chair in the solar, refusing the Iron Throne until contracts had mended war's open veins. He listened, always listened, while Tywin enumerated bread shipments from the Reach, while Stannis Baratheon demanded just punishment for Lannister treachery during sack, while the Dornish envoy insisted upon reparations for Elia's murder. Through every heat of rage, Maester King answered softly, asking each man to imagine a child in a burnt village and speak in that child's name. Some nights he wept alone. He wept for Rhaella, hidden far away and due to be delivered of child without husband, brother, or kingdom. He wept for Rhaegar's golden harp strings, now rusting in river mud. He wept for the sons of Rickard Stark rotted in distant snows, for Jon Arryn forced to choose between loyalty and justice, for the way dragons had become myths long before they died. But he dried his tears each morning with the same cloth. A square of Black Brother's wool he still carried in his sleeve, the memory of his vows stitched in every fiber. And slow, though the turning wheels turn they did, bread returned to market stalls. Smithies creaked back to life. The price of salt dropped as fishing boats dared the narrow sea again. Small folk who had huddled in cellars crept out into sunshine, astonished to find the sunshine still warm. They still told tales of Robert's hammer and Tywin's gold, but increasingly they spoke too of an old man in black, who smelled of parchment and pine and wielded only words, yet whose words did what steel had not. The coronation came at last beneath a sky as blue as hatchling dragon eyes. No wildfire, no fountains of silk, no pyres of burning lords. Simply a sept of Baelor stripped of jewels to feed the hungry and hung with woven banners from every house that had bent knee. AEMON entered leaning on a polished alder staff, white eyes lifted not to marble saints but to the murmur of countless living souls packed shoulder to shoulder. The high septon set the crown of Aegon, the Conqueror, upon his head. Too large, heavy, and for a heartbeat, the hall was silent, as though the realm itself breathed in. Then every bell in King's Landing pealed bright thunder, and ravens burst skyward in a black cloud that soon dissolved into the blue. Tywin bowed. Robert bowed. Even Varys dipped low, silk slippers whispering across stone. Somewhere in the crowd, a girl barely 5 tugged her mother's sleeve and asked why the king wore black like night's watchmen. The mother smiled through tears. Because, she whispered, he never forgot his watch over us. In the weeks that followed, royal decrees arrived written in the same crabbed hand that had once catalogued moldy scrolls atop the wall. Crownland's farms left fallow under Aerys were parceled to veteran soldiers of both sides, paid for by a tax on Lannister gold shipments. A price Tywin swallowed because the realm would know which lion devoured which calves. A provisional council included seats for Baratheon, Arryn, Stark, Tyrell, and Martell alike. Rhaella and her newborn daughter were offered safe return to the capital, though they remained on Dragonstone for now. A royal galley ferried supplies monthly beneath banners, half red dragon, half stag. The king himself spent afternoons in a garden that once belonged to Rhaenyra, now overrun by ivy. There he listened as children of small folk chased butterflies and as septas taught them to read simple scripture. He spoke to them often, asking what stories they loved. They answered shyly at first, then with boldness, marveling at a king who thought their voices mattered. Some would recall in old age that the first story he ever told them was of a brotherhood of the wall that loved the realm so fiercely it surrendered all else. They did not understand then, but felt its weight as surely as morning dew. Yet peace was a delicate weed. Stannis brooded at storm's end, unsatisfied by half measures. Balon Greyjoy sharpened grievances along the sea. The Dornish seethed, though they smiled. And beyond the wall, winter rumbled more than any man's ambition. AEMON knew the cost of ignoring distant rumblings. He dispatched riders, knights sworn directly to the crown, to survey the north for any sign of White or Walker. He financed the watch with grain and steel, sending word. He signed it not with crown but with a circle that echoed black iron links. Though the old king's knees pained him, he held court each dawn, hearing petitioners from first cockcrow until news bell. None were turned away. Some left with pouches of seeds, others with charters of land, others simply with the promise that their grief had been heard. Many nights he collapsed onto cushions long after moonrise, and more than once Pycelle begged him to rest. "I will rest," AEMON would reply, "when the realm can stand on stronger legs than mine. But even a dragon forged of service must sleep." One evening, while he walked slow circles about the Tower of the Hand, a chill crept down his spine more bitter than any wall wind. He paused, breath frosting in air too warm for frost. Somewhere in the city a dog howled, shattering into abrupt silence. He did not know then whether death stalked him or merely memory, but he recognized the feeling. A shadow stretched long from a coming winter none could yet see. He pressed a hand to the cool stone parapet and waited for the pain to pass. Fire and blood had shaped him, but now ice and duty sculpted the last edges of his days. If he had bought the realm a single generation of peace, would that be enough? He hoped so. Yet hope alone never held a wall of ice or of policy. Walls required watchmen, and watchmen required faith. In his pocket, he kept a carved wooden dragon the size of a child's thumb, a gift from a recruit at Castle Black whose name he had long since forgotten. Fingers traced its ridges whenever fear tightened his chest. That night he traced them until dawn painted the eastern horizon in blush and gold. Then he straightened, smoothing the black folds of his robe, and shuffled back toward chambers where ink and ravens waited. Another day, another petition, another chance to hold the realm together with words alone. Far beyond King's Landing's morning bustle, beyond the red mountains and the green waters of the summer sea, whispers of the blind dragon king began to wash against distant shores. In Pentos and Volantis inlets, where courtesans practiced their smiles, in Korth, where merchant princes weighed all fables against profit. Some scoffed. No realm could stand on frail bones so long. Others listened closely, for frailty often ushered in opportunity. And in a cluttered magister's manse in Bravos, a pale young woman of silver-gold hair held her newborn daughter close, and considered what kind of world might welcome them now. But for now the world rested in an old man's keeping. 5 hours of tale would scarcely cover the first chapter of his reign, for reigns are not measured in battles alone. They are measured in harvests reaped, in winters survived, in lullabies sung unafraid beneath walls no longer ringing with siege bell. They are measured in the breaths of small folk who dare to imagine growing old. So AEMON breathed, and the realm breathed with him, each inhale fragile, each exhale hopeful, each moment a stitch binding 7 fractious kingdoms into something like a whole cloth. And if, somewhere beyond the horizon, true winter gathered claws of ice and eyes of blue, then let winter come. There was still a wall, still brothers sworn, and still, at the heart of it all, a maester who had once been prince, then brother, then king, and always a guardian in the darkness. The yellow moon climbed out of the black water, like an ember dredged from a dying hearth, its cracked face mirrored in the dark river that lapped at the quays. Lanterns bobbed along the wharves, thin shields against the hour when night surrendered to nothing but itself. In Maegor's holdfast, the new king lingered beside a brazier whose coals hissed faintly as resin bled from oak chips. AEMON had learned to measure such nights by sound alone. Wind canted through embrasures, the faint clink of chains as sentries shifted their weight, the shuddered gasp of a candle guttering out. It reminded him of Castle Black's towers, but here the air smelled not of hoarfrost and pine, but of warm horse dung and perfumed tallow, of overripe apricots bruising beneath the wine carts on the street of silk. He had convened the council until the bells chimed midnight, then dismissed them when no tongue could wag further without turning on itself. Tywin Lannister departed first, boots cracking on the mosaic of the 9 great houses, as though each crest were one more skull to grind beneath his heel. Robert Baratheon lingered last, slumped upon a bench of gilded weirwood too fine for any man shaped by storms and salt. He ran thick fingers across the haft of his hammer with the tenderness of a man stroking a dog's ears, then hefted the weight as though assuring himself it was real in a hall gone soft with talk and parchment. "You could end this dithering with a single decree," Robert had muttered before leaving. "Name me your hand, let me hammer out the dents, and the realm will stand straight by week's end." AEMON's reply had been soft yet immovable. "Iron that is heated too quickly may straighten, yet once cooled it grows brittle. Let us temper the metal first." Robert grunted, the sound half laugh, half curse, and tramped out with the clamor of a smithy cart rolling downhill. When the door shut, the king had been alone, save for the brazier, the cold hands ravens rustling on the perch behind him, and his own breathing. He traced every line of the map in his mind once more. The hissing marches where Stannis stewed, the reach dripping milk and honey, yet wary of Tywin's claws. The eastern isles where a silver-haired widow rocked her babe to sleep amid Dragonstone's gulf. He had promised each of them something: peace, justice, safety, and the promises wound around his ribs tighter than maester's chains. Morning came not in a fanfare but in a yawn. King's Landing woke grudgingly, groggy from ale and relief. Bakers fired ovens, smiths uncovered anvils, and fishwives scrubbed scales from steps leading down to flea-bottoms, half-flooded lanes. Rumor said the blind king wandered the city disguised in a plain black cloak, listening to gutter politics as keenly as to lords in silk. Some believed it, some did not. All spoke more softly whenever a black-robed man approached. In truth, AEMON had only ventured twice beyond the inner gates. Once to the ruins left by wildfire at the Guildhall of Alchemists, and once to the Sept of the Evenstar where refugee children bedded among shattered pews. But the whispers served him better than any spy. Fear of unseen ears coaxed tongues into honesty. On the 15th day of his reign, a galley from Dragonstone hove into the black water amid a roar of tide. White sails bore the red three-headed dragon quartered with the black stag, Robert's concession to calm the dockside ring. AEMON stood upon the outer barbican, the morning breeze teasing the grey wisps at his temples, while Sir Barristan Selmy announced the vessel's arrival. "The Queen Dowager and the Princess Daenerys disembark under banner of truce," Selmy declared, voice echoing across the yawning pit of the dry moat. Tywin wanted the reception staged in the throne room, flanked by gold cloaks and the full gleam of lion regalia. Robert insisted on the courtyard. Let the small folk gape upon true-born dragons, if they must. Then see how little fire remained in them. AEMON chose the godswood instead, where weirwood's blossoms blew white against the sword-scarred red bark, and the only witnesses would be the carved faces of old gods and new. Rhaella Targaryen entered the grove in a gown of grey silk that glimmered like morning rain. Her hair, once bright as pale flax, had thinned and silvered, and her gaze darted as if the very leaves might strike her. Yet she stepped forward boldly, cradling a swaddled bundle to her breast. AEMON heard the child's breath, soft, hesitant, a hatchling listening for mother's heartbeat. He lowered himself to one knee, bones grinding in protest, and folded his hands. "Sister," he murmured. Rhaella stopped before him, a tremor in her exhale. "You should not kneel, not in your own city." "I kneel to life when it braves the realm," he answered, sightless eyes fixed upon the hush between their heartbeats. She exhaled again, and in that breath years peeled away. 2 children playing among Dragonstone's smoky cliffs, braiding each other's hair with shells and salt. Then the breath was gone, replaced by the rustling of ravens overhead and the distant clangor of the city waking. She offered the infant forward. "Daenerys," she said, "blood of my blood and of yours." AEMON reached, fingers trembling, until he brushed the downy cheek. The child stirred, a soft mewl that cracked something fragile in the old king's chest. "She's warm," he whispered, awed. a flame given form. Then he raised his voice. Bear witness, winds and gods alike, by my crown and my vows, this babe is under my protection. She shall never hunger nor fear while I yet draw breath. The godswood stood silent, but the ravens lifted a cacophony, wings battering the air like applause. AEMON listened until the sound settled. Then he rose, slowly, with Rayla's hand beneath his elbow, and together they walked the red moss path back toward the keep. Somewhere beyond rock and sea, war still flicked its tail, but within the garden, peace dared bloom anew. On the 20th day, news reached the capital of the Greyjoy fleet massing at Pike. In the council chamber, the map pins shivered, silver nails hammered into pine, to mark each longship sighted off Cape Kraken. Stannis Baratheon arrived from Dragonstone 3 nights later with salt still staining his boots. He slammed a sheaf of intercepted ravens upon the oaken table. Balon readies his forges, he announced. He will strike the moment our eyes turn elsewhere. Tywin's fingers drummed. The realm cannot afford another war. The realm rarely chooses its wars, Stannis growled. But it must answer them. Robert rolled shoulders beneath duskin jerkin, scanning the message. Let me sail. A show of strength at Lordsport. Burn a few ships. Take a few thralls. Haul their iron banners down. Balon will piss himself into surrender. AEMON tilted his head, breathing the spiced wax scent that clung to the parchment. An iron-born lord prays only to the drowned god, who calls surrender shameful. Humiliation would harden his heart, not bend it. Selmy spoke then, quiet steel. The young Greyjoy, Theon, is fostered at Winterfell. Lord Eddard Stark might intercede, or behead the boy, and send the head in a cask. Robert muttered, though without the vigor he once showed. Stark justice is hard as his winters. Hard, but not cruel. AEMON replied. He turned toward the open windows. Dispatch ravens to Winterfell. Request Lord Eddard to bring his ward to King's Landing under escort. We shall remind Pike that we hold a prince in our harbor, an anchor tied to his father's storms. Tywin's jaw flexed. He disliked any leverage not born of coin or contract, yet he inclined his head. As your grace commands. Stannis, however, remained unmollified. Ward or no, those longships will sail. Better to break their oars before the tide turns. AEMON reached across the table, placing a hand upon Stannis' wrist. The younger man stiffened. No lord touched him save for blows in training yards. Yet the old king merely rested his palm, fingers papery but steady. When I stood watch, I learned that the threat you see is seldom the deadliest. It is the one that creeps while your eyes lock upon the obvious. He let go. Bolster the garrisons at Seaguard. Pike may test them. But keep our fleets patrolling Blackwater waters. King's Landing must not appear vulnerable. If Balon hungers for glory, he will find no banquet await. Stannis dipped his chin, eyes dark as tide pools. He would obey. Stannis always obeyed the letter. Whether he agreed was another matter. And yet obedience bought time, and time was a currency AEMON meant to spend carefully. Autumn deepened. Red leaves folded over the black water like rust-flecked coins, piling against stone pilings in lazy drifts. With harvests uncertain in war-struck shires, AEMON dispatched Tyrell grain fleets northward, escorted by 1 Lannister galley for every 3 from Highgarden to Mute Talk of Reachman, rising supreme. In return, the Tyrells opened their granaries to crown inspectors, rare humility from the South's proudest gardeners. Lord Mace boasted that no famine had touched the Mander in 100 years, and none would now if King's Landing paid fair. AEMON paid in promissory notes, backed by Casterly gold, a bargain that irked Tywin, yet bound him to the realm's belly. Let the lion feed the lamb, AEMON told him privately. The lion's cubs will drink the lamb's milk through winter. Another knot pulled taut. Dorn. Prince Doran Martell arrived at the capital in a palanquin borne by 8 spearmen, whose sun and spear badges glimmered like braziers beyond the throne of swords. He moved slowly, gout swelling his joints, but his eyes were keen. He accepted AEMON's welcome with grave courtesy, then requested private audience deep in the Red Keep's solar, lined with dusty myrrh candles. There, beneath mullioned glass casting ruby shards across the floor, Doran spoke of Ilia and her children, of Oberyn's thirst for blood, of sand-steeped bones that still waited unmarried in King's Landing's charnel pits. "I will not have war," he said softly, "but nor will my people forget their princess. Justice must be done." Visibly, AEMON bowed his head. "Justice shall be our kingdom's marrow, else its bones will crumble to sand." He could not name Tywin responsible, though rumor screamed it, and justice must never be bartered for alliance. Yet he offered a narrow path. Kingsguard brothers sworn to Prince Aegon's cradle the night of the sack would stand trial for oaths abandoned. Surviving gold cloaks who pillaged in Lannister pay would forfeit coin and titles to Dorne's orphan funds. He would establish a new sepulchre for Elia and her babes beside Rhaegar's crypt, carved from pink Dornish marble imported at crown expense. "The names of the lost shall echo longer than those who slew them," he promised. Doran's lids lowered, hiding a tremor of grief. "Let their names be sung by children yet unborn," he agreed. "Then perhaps my brother's spear may remain sheathed." Behind closed door, Tywin bristled. "Red marble, a public trial. He pricks my family with needles dipped in poison." Aemon's reply was ice. "Better a needle than a spear through the heart of the realm." Tywin said nothing after that. The snows dusted the gift 3 weeks before Midwinter's Eve. AEMON knew because a raven arrived before dawn, feathers rimed, claws scraped raw by the flight. Its message, written in the cramped, hasty quill of Lord Commander Mormont, told of disappearances beyond the Milkwater, of dead things wandering under half-moon. Wildling scouts speak of pale riders armored in frost, cutting down clans without sound, Mormont wrote. "We have sighted blue eyes among the pines at dusk. The wall is watchful, yet our numbers thin. Send men, send grain, send steel. None, Nuem, Shion." The king read the letter thrice by finger and breath. No council would grasp such words. Not truly. Southron lords called White Walkers' tales for hearth fires, yet AEMON had heard the wind at the top of the wall howl through crevasses like a chorus of ice snakes. He summoned his scribe before sunrise and dictated orders. 10,000 bushels of Tyrell oats, 5,000 iron spears from Lannisport's foundries, 100 masons to mend collapsed staircases along the eastmost ranges. But men, the realm would balk at losing more sons after rebellion. Still, he penned a request to each great lord. He sealed the letters with black wax, stamped by a single weirwood leaf. Then he called for Lord Commander Barristan. "Select a retinue of 50 from the city garrison," he said, "and Sir Jaime Lannister." Selmy's eyebrows flicked. "The Kingslayer, he no longer wears white. He seeks redemption more than any," AEMON said softly. "Let him carry these ravens to the lords he once disgraced. A lion who faced his own pride may yet caution others against theirs." Jaime accepted the charge with a wry half-bow, eyes glinting like brass in torchlight. "Ravens," he said, flicking the scroll case. "Better than mad kings, I suppose." "Ravens are sometimes mad," AEMON replied, lips twitching toward a smile. "But they can be taught wisdom." "Can they?" Jaime's grin slid sideways. "We shall see." He donned a crimson cloak and rode at dawn, the 50 behind him, banners furled. Small folk watched in wary awe. Once he had come robed in white to kill a king. Now he rode in red to serve one. Whether that difference meant salvation or doom, only time would script. Winter closed its fist slowly over the north, while the south savored a final harvest. Snow choked the neck, bogmen guiding Stark parties southward to preserve trade. A letter reached the capital from Eddard Stark the day frost kissed the first roof tiles in King's Landing. He would travel with Theon Greyjoy under a banner of truce. The boy had been promised no harm. Ned Stark's words were spare and weighty. If the realm's peace be your highest aim, my sword will stand in witness. Yet know this, I will not sheathe justice to spare any house its shame. AEMON read the letter at council, and Tywin pursed lips so tight no word could slip free. Robert only nodded, as though expecting nothing less from the man who had once dragged a slain sister's bones back to Winterfell through snows thick as grief. Preparations for Ned's arrival consumed the Master of Coin, yet AEMON personally oversaw one detail: a feast hall stripped of Lannister crimson and Targaryen black alike. The banners hung would be Grey Direwolf, Golden Sun, Crowned Stag, Silver Trout, Golden Rose, Black and Red Dragon quartered with a white field, bearing a watchtower, sigil of the Night's Watch reimagined. So each lord may recall, he told the seamstress, that beyond his house stands a wall he shares with all others. The seamstress wept when she heard. Her husband had died at the Trident, leaving her 2 sons. Your Grace, she whispered, a wall for us all. She stitched the new banner from leftover scraps of wool, as thick as any snow cloak, and when it unfurled above the throne dais, it looked strangely humble in the candlelight, less a sigil than a reminder of mortality. Ned Stark rode through the gate of the gods 3 days before the new year. Theon, grown into lanky sinew and restless smirk, rode beside him, eyes swiveling at every marvel. Golden septons perfumed courtesans, the yawning maw of Dragon Pit's ruins. He tugged on Ned's sleeve more than once, whispering guesses about hidden dragons under the cobbles. Stark never rebuked him. He only watched, silent as a winter wood, measuring the city's stench and sparkle. AEMON greeted them in the throne room, staff in hand. Theon attempted a casual swagger but halted when confronted by the Iron Throne's twisted spires. Ned knelt before the king, snowflecked cloak pooling upon marble. Your Grace, he said, Winterfell is yours, and the North Mind a guard, AEMON replied. He motioned Ned to stand. You come in a season of fragile buds. Help me tend them, mon homage. They retired to Solur, with only Selmy bearing witness. AEMON laid forth his plan. Theon would serve as royal page, apprentice to the master of ships, an honor guard of sorts, yet also a leash heavier than chain. In exchange, the crown would guarantee Pike's independence within the realm, contingent upon no Ironborn reaving the mainland. Should Balon break faith, Theon's fate would be decided by Ironborn custom. A paying of the iron price, forfeit of blood, yet by his own people's hand. So the father risks what the son risks, AEMON concluded. Thus may pride meet consequence. Ned absorbed the terms like meltwater sinking into moss. And if Balon pledges obedience, then Theon returns to Pike after 10 years, a man grown in ways he would never learn among Krakens. He will carry the king's word in his marrow. Stark nodded once, saw the sense, felt the burden. Theon did not grasp it in that moment. His eagerness shone like fool's gold. But years would refine him, or break him. They spoke long of walls. The ice wall, the walls between houses, the unseen walls around men's hearts. When Ned left the Solur, AEMON was colder, for he had glimpsed once again the shape of winter creeping south, not merely on wind or walker, but on each stiff northern vow that refused to bend, even for peace. Spring teased the realm 2 months later, with rains that smelled of apple blossoms. Greyjoy longships remained in harbor, their sails patched but furled. Balin had tasted the iron of restraint and found it less bitter than losing his surviving son. Dorn's trial of the sworn shields commenced beneath the vaults of Baelor. Oberyn Martell attended with eyes like twin blades, yet left satisfied that each condemned man parted flesh from soul upon the headsman's block. Tyrell grain swept the riverlands, and for the first time since Aerys' demise, bread sold cheaper than salt pork. Some said the blind king wrought miracles, yet miracles invite tests. One afternoon, as AEMON listened to petitions in the outer court, a murmur rolled through the crowd. 2 riders burst across the cobbles, helms spotted with ice melt. Their sigils bore neither lion nor wolf nor flower. A snarling boar upon a field of black. The first rider dismounted, fell to one knee. "From the Stormlands, your grace," he cried, voice ragged. "Lord Renly requests immediate aid. A plague sweeps Tarth and Estermont. Bloody flux carried by siege water left stagnant. Whole hamlets perish. The Stormlands cannot contain the fever." The hall tensed. War was over, famine held at bay. But now disease banged its wooden spoon upon the realm's cauldron. AEMON rose. Pain lanced his spine, but he ignored it. How far north, as the sickness traveled? "Past the harvest hills," the rider answered. "Some say even Amberley weeps blood." Tywin muttered under breath. Gold could not bribe a germ. Robert surged to his feet, thunder coiling in every sinew. "Send every maester on Dragonstone," he barked. "We'll scour the coast clean ourselves if need be." "Not you," AEMON said gently. "The realm cannot risk its hammer struck by plague." He turned to Pycelle. "Gather the Citadel's best. Ferry them beneath yellow quarantine banners to Tarth. Send healers from Dorne. They know flux remedies of sun and sand. Reachman shall contribute barley mash and purified water." His voice gathered weight. "And let every sept ring bells for dawn prayer. Small folk must boil water, bury dead in quicklime pits, and burn clothing of the fallen." Selmy frowned. "Peasants will balk at burning garments in midwinter." "Better cloth than breath," AEMON murmured. Then louder, "I charge Lord Renly as Warden of the South to oversee compliance. Provide him letters patent sealed with royal sign, so no petty knight hinders his passage." Ink and wax flowed. Ravens beat south. Within 3 days, wagons of lime and barley trundled out the king's gate, escorted by Tyrell spears wearing cloth soaked in camphor. The plague would not halt for parchment, but the kingdom raced it, wheel for wheel. Oars dipped through fog, sails snapped under skies the bruised color of sickness. AEMON listened to every report, each day's tally of deaths, until numbers became mere echoes of lost names. On the 28th night he stepped into the Queen's ballroom, long since stripped for wounded overflow. Cots lined every wall, filled with men and women, too poor for the city's scant faceless physicians. He walked unannounced, cane tapping stone. At each bed he paused, asked a name, pressed a palm to fevered brows. To one child he whispered of a castle made of dream green glass, set upon clouds of lemon cake, until the girl smiled past cracked lips. Selmy flinched at infection, but the king's blindness granted him courage others lacked. He saw only hearts beating, not contagion. Back in his chamber he scrubbed hands in vinegar until skin rasped raw. "If I fall," he told his body squire, "see that the council does not fracture." The boy wept silent tears as he wrapped the king's hands in linen. Weeks slipped to months. The plague burned bright, then smoldered, then fell to embers as healing houses sprouted along the coast. Renly proved deft, charming Tyrell healers and Estermont sailors equally. The first barley harvest blossomed pale gold across fields, left fallow by war. Blacksmiths in Lannisport inscribed spearheads with runes of hope. Mothers in Dorne embroidered tiny dragon and stag emblems upon swaddling cloth tokens to ward fevers. Yet beyond the neck, the world spun colder. Reports came of a night's watch, ranging lost west of the Frost Fangs. Wildlings stumbled into the shadow of the wall, half mad, muttering of ice spiders big as hounds. AEMON's dreams stretched north each night, spinning frost webs that left him waking cold despite furs piled thick. He summoned the small council to the rookery at dawn, the chill stone walls lined with sleeping ravens. Mormont's letters warn of ancient stirrings, he said. Tywin brushed it aside, tales to frighten squires, but AEMON silenced him with a raised hand. Eyes that have looked into blizzard for half a lifetime do not conjure ghosts. Robert sighed. Send more men then. I will pledge 1,000 storm nights. No. AEMON's voice was sudden steel, scattering men like chaff feeds only the wind. We must forge a chain that binds each link from wall to door. A realm of watchers beyond just black cloaks. Lindsay, he proposed a levy, every house to send 10 men each year as sworn guardians of the realm, 6-month service at the wall, under Night's Watch command. Thereafter, returning north or south as veterans who might speak truth of what they'd seen. Called it the King's Guarding, he mused, smiling at Selmy's raised brow. A guard not of a king's body, but of the kingdom's edge. The council scoffed at logistics, at costs, at lords resenting forced postings. AEMON listened, nodded, and penned decrees anyway. If gold buys swords to spill brothers' blood, he said, let it buy shovels to bury winter's bones. He financed the levy with a modest tariff on Braavosi spice, reasoning even Tywin would not begrudge coin drawn from foreign coffers. He dreamed that night of a line of torches atop the wall, stretching unbroken from Eastwatch to the Shadow Tower, each torch held by a different banner. Lion beside wolf, rose beside kraken, spear beside stag. The image warmed him more than any hearth. The following spring, Robert Baratheon wed, not Cersei Lannister, the alliance Tywin had long groomed, nor Lyanna Stark, whose memory still bled in Robert's cups. Rob's bride was Lady Margaery Tyrell, her smile as bright as Reach sunlight, her gown sewn with velvet stag lilies. The match galvanized the realm, sealing grain roots, tempering Tyrell ambition, and pricking Lannister pride. Tywin swallowed his fury behind a host of lavish gifts. A tourney at Lannisport to celebrate 15,000 gold dragons. A gilded cradle for Daenerys. A new guardhouse along the Gold Road. At the wedding feast, AEMON sat between Rhaella and Doran, guiding Rhaella's trembling hand to the dishes as servants announced roasted swan and sweet plum wine. The blind king asked after each flavor as though tasting through her lips. Across the hall, Robert lifted Margaery onto the high dais, boasting of heirs who would ride stags with roses in their manes. Laughter drenched the rafters. For a heartbeat, AEMON feared the levity would unmoor him. He felt the age in his bones like frost again, yet he found himself smiling. A wedding feast, not a funeral pyre. That was victory enough for one night. When candles guttered low, Margaery approached the king, curtsying deep. "Your Grace," she said, voice tinkling like glass chimes. "May I request a gift?" "Of course," AEMON replied. She rose, cheeks warming. "Stories. My brothers and I grew on songs of dragons, yet we know only rumor. Will you tell our court of old Valyria, of Maegor's wrath, of the Field of Fire?" A hush fell. This was no rehearsed flattery. She truly thirsted for tales older than her house's golden spires. AEMON inclined his head. "At dawn tomorrow, gather whomever wishes to learn. We shall speak of dragons that build as well as dragons that burn." The next morning, he addressed a circle of young lords and ladies in the throne room, but not from the Iron Throne. He perched upon a stool near the dais, hands folded on cane, and spoke for 2 hours of the doom, of smoke rising red over Valyrian spires, of 14 flames cracking like thunder. He named the dragons Valerian, Vhagar, Meraxes, their wings casting shadows that still shaped crowns centuries later. When he finished, Marjorie bowed low. "Our children will remember," she promised. Aemon hoped so. Years scrolled outward, parchment unfurling beyond any scribe's table. The plague ebbed. Greyjoy sails remained docked. Dorne's silence grew from sullen to measured politeness. Aemon's levies swelled the watch by thousands. The iron gates of Castle Black hung heavy with new lock bars, forged in the storms near Storm's End. Wolves roamed the King's Road unmolested. Farmers rebuilt fences. Harvest songs replaced funeral dirges. Yet age rode ever upon the king's spine. One crisp morning, he woke unable to feel the fingers of his left hand. The maesters mixed tinctures, willow bark and mint, poppy seed and sparmint. But sensation crept away like a tide. He joked that at least now the writer's cramp would torment him less. But Rhea leapt, and Selmy hovered, and Varys' silken shoes rustled more urgently along corridors, scented with myrrh. Aemon summoned Robert, Ned, Doran, Tywin, Stannis, and Mace Tyrell into the solar. The Princess Daenerys, now 3, played with wooden lions beneath the window, her laughter a chime against the hush of power. Aemon lifted her into his lap. "I will not sit the Iron Throne forever," he said. "Nor do I wish to." He stroked the child's silver gold hair. "When she is of age, the realm may choose her if it will. Until then, a council of regents shall rule upon my passing." Tywin stiffened, seeing his grip on the kingdom waver. Robert scrubbed his beard, unwilling to trade Warhammer for quills. Ned frowned, hating politics. Mace Tyrell perked like a rooster at a sunrise only he could see. Doran remained still, pensive. Stannis' mouth twitched. This was law, and law he revered. In their silence, Aemon laid forth the regent charter. Each great house, one vote, decisions by majority. Tie broken only by the High Septon. The regents could not declare war without unanimous consent, nor alter tax edicts without 3/4 majority. They were custodians, not kings. "This realm," he whispered, "will learn to stand on many legs, not one." Arguments blazed, cooled, blazed again. But each lord owed him peace, owed him more than grudges, for he had healed the land they meant to loot. Begin a civil war over a charter, and small folk would jeer them, crows feasting upon their banners instead of bodies this time. So they agreed, reluctantly, but they agreed. The charter was signed under a weirwood and garrison tree, emblazoned upon fresh parchment. Daenerys slept through it all, head nestled against her great uncle's shoulder, dreaming dragon dreams. Late one night, long after bells hushed and the moon walked alone across black velvet, Aemon rose from his bed, unassisted. He donned a cloak of plain wool, brushed aside the guards' murmurs, and wandered into the dark corridor. His feet led him, as if by old maps etched in marrow, to the rookery. There, ravens slumbered atop perches, feathers ruffled against candle draught. He loosened one door, stepped onto the parapet where cold wind tattooed his cheeks. He breathed in salt and smoke and the faint spice of distant dunes, a realm's whole tapestry. "I have done what I could," he said to no one. The wind answered in low moans threading the crenellations. He listened for the wall's voice, faint yet persistent, northward beyond all hearing. He whispered the night's watch oath again, each word a coal against his tongue. Then he straightened. Behind him, a single raven hopped to the sill. It croaked once, a harsh click of beak. Aemon turned his blind gaze upon it, smiling. "Fly," he murmured. "Tell them the realm still watches." The bird flapped into the gloom, wings slapping the cold air. Aemon listened until the sound dissolved into night, until even the city's heartbeat sank to a distant murmur. He remained there, old king of dust and dream, until dawn laid its first blush upon the bay. Guards found him leaning on the parapet, eyes closed, breathing slow. They thought him asleep and dared not rouse him. Only when the rising sun gilded his thin hair like a halo did they see the stillness. The soft smile set upon lips that would speak no more. The city woke to bells, but not of dread. They rang clear and high, a toll of gratitude. In the throne room the regents convened beneath banners stitched from every house's cloth, the new law sealed and ready. They wept openly, Tywin less than the rest, yet his hand trembled as he signed the first decree, a day of remembrance each year to honor the watchful king. Far to the north, at Castle Black, an old raven lit upon Jean Marmont's shoulder at breakfast. It croaked thrice, shuffled, and dropped a single black feather at his plate. Mormont closed fingers around the plume. "He's gone," he said. Eastwatch's horn blew once, mournful, low, echoing across ice cliffs and skirling over white forests. Wildlings looked up from campfires. Rangers paused mid-step, hands to hearts. In their quiet, they felt the passing, as if winter itself drew a sigh. And somewhere in a garden within the Red Keep, a little girl with silver hair chased orange butterflies through lemon trees. She did not see the shapes of men debating succession above her. She saw sunlight and blossoms, and a sky wide as promise. In her laughter lived every hope the old king had nursed. Hope that one day crowns would weigh less than the dreams they safeguarded. Hope that dragons, even unseen, might guide hearts toward building instead of burning. The realm endured. It would face wars, winters, rebellions yet unimagined. But for a time, under the gentle reign of a blind maester turned reluctant dragon king, Westeros remembered how to breathe between storms. And in that breath, brief in the span of centuries yet vital as the first cry of a newborn, 7 kingdoms touched fingertips across chasms of blood, and found, if not love, at least the grace of common heartbeat. Thus the watch was kept, not by one man, but by all. The bells tolled through King's Landing for 7 days and 7 nights, each measured clang rolling over slate roofs and crooked chimneys like waves upon a shingle shore. Mourners filled the streets in ragged ribbons, small folk pressing wilted asters against polished gates, lords and ladies cloaked in ink-black velvet gathering beneath house sigils dipped in sable dye. Yet in the Red Keep the regents labored rather than wept, their grief harnessed to parchment and quill. They dared not squander the fragile lattice of trust Maester King AEMON had forged. One false note could shatter harmony into 1,000 splinters, sharper than Valyrian steel. On the dawn of the 8th day, Eddard Stark descended the Tower of the Hand to find the small council already assembled around a table strewn with half-read correspondence. Tywin Lannister sat rigid at the head, the lion in mourning black, but lion nonetheless. Robert Baratheon lounged opposite him, knuckles wrapped around a half-drained cup of Dornish red. Prince Doran's palanquin bearers had settled their burden beside the window. The prince himself reclined amid silk cushions, eyes bright despite the gout knotting his fingers. Stannis stood to one side like a granite pillar, jaw clenched, while Mace Tyrell toyed with a sprig of mint between his teeth, bright cloak rustling. "We are balanced on a blade," Ned said without preamble. "The realm watches for a stumble." Tywin's jaw twitched. "Then we will not stumble." Robert exhaled, the sound carrying ale and exhaustion. "We needed a single voice, not 6. We need a hand to steer this. Ned, you are that man." Stark's gray eyes hardened. "I will serve the charter, but we stand as many voices by design, Robert. One voice would unmake the king's final wish. Stannis tapped the table with a rolled missive. While we debate titles, the North reports a fresh slew of disappearances. Fisherfolk from the lonely light vanished, boats adrift, nets frozen. The watch begs for seasoned men. Tywin tossed a sealed scroll toward Stark. Crimson wax lion stamped its center. My vassals will not send sons to freeze on a fool's errand. Winter storms, wildling raids, nothing more. They speak of pale riders, Stannis pressed. Of corpses walking. Mace Tyrell sighed theatrically. Ghost stories. Let the knights watch mind their ghosts. Mana, blessed, Tishinuis paw. Doran's voice sliced softly through the hubbub. The Maester King believed those ghosts. Disregard them now, and we dishonor the crown we claim to uphold. Ned broke the argument with a single word. Enough. He unrolled Tywin's scroll. An invoice placing crown debt to Casterly Rock at 42,000 dragons, payable within the year. The lion demands coin, while the wall demands men, Stark said. We cannot pay both. Robert tapped his goblet on the board. If gold is short, mine the mines below the city. Aerys left vines untouched. Tywin snorted. The veins are slagged with wildfire tunnels. Any pick swung there could ignite half the hill. Stark rose, palms flat on parchment. Then we tax luxury imports, silks, spices, Myrish lace. Redirect that silver north. We cut tourney purses, trim household retinues. Tyrell bristled. Strip the realm of pageantry. Bread alone feeds no souls, Lord Stark. Bread feeds bellies, Ned countered. Bellies march before banners. Robert studied Stark over the lip of his cup, then nodded. Draft a levy, Ned. I'll sign to Naunjizamis. Tywin's thin smile revealed nothing. Very well, but know this. Merchants flee where tariffs bite. Merchants return to safe harbors. Doran murmured. Let us make the realm safe. Stannis handed Stark a second parchment, bearing the broken wax of Castle Black. Lord Commander Mormont requests an audience. He rides with the first levy of guardians, due within the fortnight. Ned's stomach tightened. Then, within the fortnight, we must present a realm worth guarding. AEMON's funeral pyre rose upon Rhaenys Hill, a platform of alder logs, perfumed with myrrh and sage. At its center rested a simple casket carved of ebony, unadorned save for a night's watch cloak folded beneath the lid. Daenerys clung to her mother's skirts, wide violet eyes reflecting each flickering torch. Rhaella stood straight, though her fingers quaked upon the child's shoulder. When the High Septon intoned the rites, Robert lifted a torch, but Ned reached first. He watched my sister's honor from afar, Stark whispered. Let me watch his passing now. Robert surrendered the flame. Ned touched torch to oil-soaked kindling. Fire caught with a hungry sigh, gold tongues licking skyward. The crowd hushed, except for the low moan of wind which wound through braziers like a dirge for winter's sun. Ash began to snow. Flecks drifted onto velvet cloaks and paupers' shawls alike, a final blessing of parody. The old king would have approved. As embers curled upward, Tywin's gaze never left the flames. Some said they saw moisture tremble in his lashes. Whether from smoke or sentiment, none could say. Doran bowed his head, whispering a prayer to Ilya's ghost. Stannis watched the pyre, as though measuring its heat against every future forge. Daenerys tugged her mother's hand. Why do they burn him? Dragons are born of fire, Rhaella replied, voice trembling. And sometimes they return to it. The girl nodded, solemn. When I am big, will I burn? Rhaella crouched, pressing forehead to her daughter's. Only if you wish, sweetling, only if you wish. Weeks folded together in shades of parchment, white and raven black. The tariff on luxury goods went into effect. Caravans groaned under audits, but coin filled the treasury's cracked coffers nonetheless. Tyrell envoys grumbled yet complied, sweetening reach vintages to lure buyers despite higher duties. Braavosi trade captains scoffed until the crown slashed harbor fees on ship repairs. The narrow sea soon buzzed with menders' hammers instead of smugglers' whispers. Meanwhile, the first levy of guardians, 400 souls from 7 houses, marched through the king's gate behind Joa Mormont. The small folk lined the streets, cheering not colored banners, but the stark black tabards each man wore. They hailed Sons of Dorn and Sons of the Vale alike, faces flush with pride. Even Tywin watched from his balcony, expression unreadable. Mormont saluted the Red Keep, a single raised fist, before turning north again without ceremony. The guardians followed, boots drumming stone like distant thunder. That same evening, Jaime Lannister returned from his Ravens tour. Dust filmed his armor, and his smile held new crack. He knelt before the council only after a pointed cough from Selmy. "I delivered the king's call," he reported. Some lords welcomed it. Others spat upon the parchment. Roose Bolton requested an exemption. He shrugged. I reminded him, leather peels north or south. He chose a dozen volunteers. Stannis' eyes narrowed. If they do not, the charter demands fines. Then flay the fines from their hides, Jaime quipped. Tywin's glare silenced him. Across the narrow sea, in a city of sand-washed domes called Pentos, whispers of Westerosi, change fluttered like banners caught by shifting breezes. Magister Illyrio Mopatis, fat as a harbor seal and twice as shrewd, received a parchment sealed with gray wax. He slit it open with a jade knife, eyes dancing as he read. The Regency Council had promised amnesty and stipend to any Targaryen loyalist returning with peaceful intent. A realm begging exiles to return, he mused, stroking oiled mustache. How ripe the fruit when plucked. He dispatched envoys westward, bearing trade contracts scented with honey and rosewater, and inward, deeper into his manse's echoing halls, he sought a room draped in shadows. There waited a young man of 20, pale hair bound back, eyes cool as sea foam. "Viserys," Illyrio purred, offering the scroll. "Your niece sits under Lion's watch. But look, here's a chance to join her." Now, Viserys snatched the parchment. His gaze blazed. "They invite me home with empty titles and promises." His voice trembled between rage and hope. "Yet a prince does not return as servant. I will take what is mine, fire and blood." Illyrio bowed slightly. "Then we gather both." The Iron Throne steadies itself on frail legs. A push at the right moment, and perhaps dragons fly again. In King's Landing, Daenerys grew as children do. Too quickly and never quick enough. Her 4th name day dawned beneath banners, embroidered with silver comets trailing rose petals. The city feasted. Bakers shaped sweet rolls into 3-headed dragons, and jugglers tossed painted eggs skyward. Robert hoisted the little princess onto his shoulders and led a mock chase about the throne room. Marjorie laughing, Rhaella fretting at each near stumble. Tywin presented a jeweled hair comb, but Daenerys preferred the wooden direwolf carved by Lord Stark's squire. She named the toy Snowtail and slept with it curled against her cheek. Yet the celebration ended with an uninvited guest. That night, a black sail drummed from Pike, anchored in the black water, torch-lit deck revealing a single figure. Tall, gaunt, beard braided with rusted nails. Captain Dagmar, cleft jaw, bowed before the regents the next morning, clicking teeth upon iron half-masked lips. "My lord commands tribute," he rasped, voice echoing through the council chamber. 20 barrels of gold for safe passage of your grain fleets. Pay, and our axes rest." Robert's laughter shook the tapestries. Dagmar's hand found the axe at his belt. Tywin's fingers drummed at the arm of his chair. Mace Tyrell cooed about negotiation, but Ned Stark's eyes iced over. "The crown does not pay pirates," he said. Dagmar's grin split scars. "Then the drowned god will drink Lannister blood and reach grain alike." Stannis stepped forward. "Return to your black boats with this message. The next Kraken tentacle to touch a mainland keel will be nailed to the gates of Storm's End." Dagmar bowed mock deep. "Message heard," he hissed, retreating under guard. But his smile lingered like fish rot. In the noon heat, Ned dispatched ravens north. Greyjoy raids imminent. Winterfell prepare. Tywin ordered coastal garrisons doubled. Stannis prepared his fleet. Still, a chill settled behind Ned's heart, the chill of two fronts looming, one of iron, one of ice. Night fell with a copper moontide glossing the river. In the Red Keep's rookery, Varys unrolled a fresh parchment. Glowworm ink shimmering as though alive. Little birds and pike reported longships launched before sunset, hulls stuffed with pitch-soaked torches. Simultaneously, shadows beyond the wall thickened. Another ranging mist. Varys Quill hovered over his cipher. He sensed the weave tightening, threads of sea-salted ambition entwined with the silent advance of something older. He padded along empty corridors until he reached the council's map room, where Ned Stark pored over charts. "Lord Stark," the spider whispered, candlelight dancing upon his bald crown. "What flutters in my web? What if the Kraken strikes to mask the storm in the snow?" Ned looked up, weary. "Our eyes are never wide enough." Varys spread the parchment before him. "No doubt, but together many eyes may suffice." He traced routes, Pike to Seaguard, Seaguard to Fair Isle, while his other hand sketched ghost paths north from Frostfangs to Eastwatch. "If longships draw the Lion's fleets west, the wall stands naked. The levee stands," Ned countered, "for now." Yet winter's jaws opened wider each week. Varys folded the map with soft precision. What hunter herds prey except to keep his wounds sharp? Ned blotted his quill. "My father said that even a half-heard truth is a debt we owe to our children." Wise words from a hard land. Varys bowed. "Let us not default." The longships raided at new moon. They swooped on Maidenpool first, towers blazing, fisherfolk hauled screaming. Ned's messenger ravens flapped into the capital bearing ash-stained feathers, and the council erupted. Robert wanted to sail immediately. Stannis begged him to hold court and let seasoned captains strike. Tywin demanded Lannisport focus on its own coastline. Mace Tyrell sent riders to muster Bitterbridge archers. Doran observed from cushions, eyes half-lidded, calculating. Ned hammered pommel on oak. "Greyjoy wants us scattered. We respond with focus. Lord Tywin's fleet defends the west. Lord Mace guards the Manda mouth. Stannis leads the royal fleet against Pike, taking Robert's warhammer with him." Robert bristled, but Ned pressed on. "I sail north to Winterfell. If the wall is breached while we chase Krakens, the realm falls regardless." Tywin sneered. "You would abandon the capital to your wolves." "I would guard it from the shadows crawling beyond ice," Ned replied. Robert exhaled. "Do it, Ned, but leave me men enough to hold the keep. You will have my daughters and 2,000 Northmen sworn," Stark promised. Doran inclined his head. "And Dawn will watch the sand roads." Thus, the Kraken War began, though later singers would name it the Candlemas Reaving, for torches dotted the sea like a night sky turned upside down. Ned's march north was swift, silent. Along King's Road villages, people lined up with torches to salute. They remembered he had braved wildfire to retrieve Lyanna's bones. 20 leagues from Winterfell, he crossed paths with Mormont's returning levy, 300 half-frozen souls bound south for rest. They spoke of the forest feeling wrong, of silence so heavy it throbbed in eardrums, of snow falling in still air from branches that should have been bare. One ranger told of eyes, blue as glacial dawn, winked from the dark behind him. "I ran," he confessed, tears freezing on his cheeks. "I'm not ashamed. Ashamed men are dead men." Ned ordered his column to double pace. When at last Winterfell rose on the horizon, gray walls and warm hearth smoke beckoned, but dread sat on its ramparts. Master Luvine met him at the gate, parchment shaking. "6 wildlings found south of the wall near Queen's Crown," he said. "Frozen, no wounds, but when we moved the bodies, eyes opened, bright blue, like stained glass. They rose, Lord Stark." Ned's guts twisted. "What happened?" "Torrin Whitehill's axe answered before terror could," Luvin whispered. "But the bodies bled black, like congealed night." He swallowed. "The old tales, my lord." Ned pressed fist to heart. "Send word to King's Landing. The long night stirs, and gather every child of the north behind strong walls." He climbed the battlements, staring south where dawn glimmered faint. And may the gods help the south to believe. In the capital, Daenerys played upon the floor of her lessons chamber, molding soft clay into shapes. She fashioned a dragon, long neck, crooked wings, and a stag with spiraling antlers. She pressed them together until they merged, antlers curling into scaly crests. Her septa frowned. "Those beasts do not breed, child, but they can be friends," the girl insisted, violet eyes clear. "Papa AEMON said friends can hold walls against storm." Across the city, in a cellar beneath the Street of Flower, a coven of red priests gathered around a shallow brass brazier. Flames licked salts and oils, turning green, then indigo. At the brazier's heart flickered an ember shaped like 3 tiny dragons interlocked. The high priestess, Kinvara, watched patterns dance. "The prince that was promised awakens in snow and salt," she intoned. "But a child of storm and dragons may yet end light." Her acolytes bowed. One, a young man with scarred cheeks, slipped from the cellar at dawn, bound for the Red Keep. He carried a wrought iron amulet shaped like a hearth flame, pulsing faint. The guards halted him, but he proclaimed urgent prophecy. They brought him to Master of Whisperers, Aerys. The spider listened while the acolyte spoke of shadow hands reaching from ice and of a girl whose blood could summon dawn. Aerys dismissed him with coin for bread, yet bid a little bird follow. When the acolyte vanished into an alley and never emerged, Aerys tasted ash on his tongue. Stannis' fleet smashed Pyke's outer defenses in a storm of flaming pitch and trebuchet stone the size of oxen. Dagmar Cleftjaw's longships turned from raid to defense but found no quarter. Stannis' galleys scissored them, fire arrows raining. Robert's warhammer crushed the Greyjoy gatehouse, his bellow carrying over Sir. Balon Greyjoy fled into Sea Tower catacombs, leaving eldest son Roderick to parley surrender. On the morrow, Roderick knelt on the sodden long bridge before Baratheon and Stannis. "Spare the Isles," he implored, rain streaking his weather-carved face. "We will raid no more. Theon lives, a prince for peace." Robert swung the hammer to his shoulder, eyes narrowing, but Stannis raised a steady hand. "The realm bleeds elsewhere," he said. "We have men to spare no more." He motioned for ink. Roderick etched oath in salt-water blotted script, sealing it with a thumb dipped in ash, symbol of iron-born contrition. Stannis burned the scroll edges to mark vow by fire. Yet as they sailed east again, rain hissed upon crimson sails, and Robert muttered, "Craven whelps. They'll break the moment we loosen reins." Stannis stared north, silent. 3 days later, ravens beat battered wings into the capital. Feathers rhymed despite spring thaw. They carried Lord Commander Mormont's latest, spotted Walker host near Icemark. Too many to engage. Request dragon glass from Dragonstone Cliffs. Desperate. Maester Pazell scoffed at childish superstitions, but Selmy remembered tales of Aegon's ancestors carving obsidian sickles at Dragonstone. He relayed memory to Ned's scribe stationed in the capital. That night, Ned's messenger falcon soared from Maegor's holdfast, winging into dusk with scroll. Scour mines beneath Dragonstone. Send every shard to the wall. In the forge halls there, sparks showered as blacksmiths split obsidian into blades, arrowheads, spear points. Redsmith Salator San oversaw binding glass to dragonbone shafts. Sailors from Lys muttered of cursed blades. Maesters countered with talk of volcanic glass's chill. Whatever truth, the arsenal grew. Meanwhile, Tywin Lannister paced the Tower of the Hand. He studied ledgers. Tariffs siphoned gold from his coffers. Fleets drained them further. Yet, northern levies burgeoned, commanded by a Stark, who now held true martial power. Tywin saw the scales tilt. Lions disliked imbalance. He penned a letter in cipher, addressed to Riverrun. Let us weigh wolves against krakens. Lion may feast thereafter. He sealed it with plain wax, no sigil, and entrusted it to a silent messenger riding under moonless sky. Varys' birds trailed but lost the rider beyond Tumblr's folds. The spider tapped quill upon vellum while candle grease dripped. If the lion sought to pit north against Ironborn, winter might consume both flanks, leaving rock gleaming in golden sun. Varys scribbled a note to Doran. Beware the paw that strokes while claws unsheath unseen. The sand road hummed with hoofbeats by dawn. Winterfell's great hall rang with hammer and saw. Armorers fitted boiled leather over ringmail for lads, barely sprouting whiskers. Granaries filled with barley taxed from southerners, yet rationed to last siege. Ned stood upon the battlements with Maester Luwin and his children, Robb tall and stern, Sansa pale, yet resolute, Arya bouncing upon toes, Bran bundled against wind. We prepare, he told them, gaze sweeping north. But fear not. Fear is a seed we choose to water. No. Ani. Robb's jaw tightened. I would march to the wall now. You will guard the hearth first, Ned answered. Fight if you must, but remember what you defend. Sisters, small folk, hope. That night, a horn sounded from the distant woods. Trespassers captured, wildlings wearing rags of crow feathers. They babbled of a force carving through haunted forest. Blue-eyed demons riding dead bears. Ned interrogated them beneath torchlight. One woman, face tattooed with dark swirls, clutched his hand. They'd walk, stark, she hissed. They come for warm meat. She pressed a pouch into his palm, a handful of bright orange berries. Fire's seed, she whispered, eyes rolling. Burn them, and ice screams. Ned delivered the berries to Luwin. Ash bloom, the maester identified. Rare even in Sothrios. Burns hotter than oil. Ned ordered the weirwood forges stoked, arrowheads dipped. In King's Landing, Daenerys dreamed. She dreamed of a wall of pure white crowned with torches. On the wall walked wolves and lions side by side, their pelts rimed with frost, breath pluming silver. Far below, a great dark tide heaved against ice. Daenerys reached out, but found herself holding a torch that burned 3 hues: gold, red, and jade. The flame did not sear. It hummed like distant dragon song. She woke, room aglow with morning. At her bedside perched a wooden direwolf, its painted eyes reflecting sunlight. She hurried to Rhaella's chamber. The wall is cold, she declared. We must send fire. Rhaella smiled sadly. We are sending obsidian, dearest. No, the child insisted. She pointed to her chest. We must send this fire, the one inside. Rhaella pulled her close. When you are older, perhaps. But as she smoothed her daughter's hair, the scent of charred sage drifted through the open window. She shivered, though the dawn was warm. South of Winterfell, near the last river, the first engagement between living and dead unfolded beneath pallid moon. A patrol of 20 guardians met a column of walkers, leading whites clothed in crusted snow. The battle was swift and horrific. Dragon-glass daggers shattered blue limbs like fragile crystal. However, each black glass blade cracked on second strike. But ash-bloom arrows lit whites in roaring columns of green-orange fire. And for a moment, the night flashed like dawn. Survivor Michael Reed limped south to Winterfell, bearing a walker's severed arm still writhing. He hurled it into the courtyard where it twitched until Ned Stark doused it with pitch and set it aflame. The smell clung to stone for days. Ned dispatched ravens, obsidian effective, but fragile, fire arrows critical. Send more. Birds scattered into dark. Only half returned, wings bitten by ice storms, yet enough messages reached Dragonstone. Workshops thundered. Stannis' fleet, battered by gale, limped into black water with half sails shorn. Yet they bore captives. Dagmar Cleftjaw shackled in black iron. 2 blown ships worth of raiders. The small council convened to determine fate. Tyrell argued ransom. Time argued exemplary executions. Stannis argued hanging every man from city gates. Robert hammered table. We break their spirits by caging their lord like a thrall, he declared. Dagmar rots in Flea Bottom's deepest cell. Varys nodded, though he wondered which prison bars truly stifled a kraken's song. That night, Dagmar whispered through cell grates to a jailer with ironborn blood. The drowned god takes gifts, he rasped. Loose my chains, and Pike will spill gold into your hands. 2 nights later, the jailer's body floated in Blackwater shallows. Throat slit ear to ear. Keys missing. The kraken was gone. When Tywin learned, his fist shattered a goblet. Incompetence breeds treason, he snarled. Robert ordered citywide search. Various little birds swarmed like midges but found only rumor. A one-eyed fisherman seen rowing north, under dark sails. Spring's promise wilted under sudden frost. Across Westeros, buds blackened. Rivers rhymed overnight. Small folk whispered of the king's death, bringing deepening night. In Septibela, the High Septon preached resilience, but worshippers clutched candles as talismans. In the black cells, sorcerers muttered, feeling currents shifting beneath stone. One evening, as twilight bled indigo, Rhaella summoned the regents to the Maiden Vault. There, in a room fragrant with lilac, she unveiled a tapestry newly woven by Pentoshi artisans. It depicted a blindfolded king bridging 2 cliffs, a lion on one, a wolf on the other, while a tiny girl crowned in starlight balanced upon his shoulders. Rhaella's voice trembled. The Magister Illyrio sends this gift, and a letter inviting my daughter to Bravos to foster in safety. They fear for her life amid wars. Tywin's eyes narrowed, exile disguised as sanctuary. Robert barked laughter. Hiding her will fracture what AEMON forged. Doran spoke quietly. Yet she's a child, target to every dagger that would carve its name upon the future. Ned touched the tapestry. We protect her here. Let foes face walls of living steel, not hopes of kidnapping. Mace Tyrell clapped hands. High Garden would host her in fragrance and song. Stannis cut him off. She is the realm's heir. She remains at its heart. Rhaella listened to the chorus, hands clasped. Finally, she lowered her head. Then wall her in steel, she said. But teach her the weight of that wall, lest it crush her spirit. Daenerys, hiding behind curtains, heard every word. That night, she crept to the godswood where her father's pyre once glowed. She dug small fingers into earth, still laced with ash. She buried the wooden direwolf there, whispering. When dawn found her asleep beneath the heart tree, its red leaves rustled as though sighing. Winterfell's ravens brought dire tidings. Walker host massing at the shivering sea, dozens of giants enslaved by ice forging a path west. Ned petitioned the council for dragonfire. Burning ships loaded with Greek fire equivalent melted into casks of volatile essence, to be sailed north and scuttled along coastlines to create fire breaks. Pycelle balked. Wildfire stockpiles were low since Aerys. Unstable, uncontrollable. Stannis slammed fist. Better wild flames than cold graves. Robert gave grudging assent. We craft only what's needed, and gods help us if one spark hits the city. Tyrion Lannister, visiting on behalf of Casterly Rock, volunteered to oversee safe transport. His mind for machinery could tame unstable barrels. Tywin hesitated, then allowed it, perhaps too readily, Varys thought. As Targaryen loyalists trickled from Essos, Viserys plotted. He mustered sellswords. The Golden Company turned him away. Contracts with Myre paid richer coin. But the Ragged Standard, a ragtag band of exiled Summer Islanders, agreed for promise of Dragonstone's loot. Illyrio secured 3 ships. Viserys planned to land at Storm's End, raised banners of returning king. His sister's child would weaken regents by splitting allegiances. So he believed. But spies on Lycian docks carried word west. Varys unrolled their reports, little beads of sweat gleaming. The spider weighed, revealing the threat. Tywin would prefer Viserys dead, yet Daenerys might require kin one day. Secrets fermented in the vaults behind Varys' eyes. As summer's turn approached, a comet rippled across the night sky. Red as split fruit, tails tinged green. Small folk claimed it the sword of the gods. Maesters scribbled of a rare passing of the Jade Dragon Star, portending either plenty or plague. In the north, the comet's fire silhouetted Walker, silhouettes upon ridge lines. They seemed to bow to it. At Castle Black, Samwell Tarly recorded the omen in trembling hand, pages blotched when his candle guttered from unnatural draught. Ned Stark felt its heat even through chill practice yard wind. He pressed palm to the heart tree's white bark. It pulsed warm. The old gods stirred, though what they spoke he could not decipher. That night he dreamed of a stair of obsidian rising from Winterfell's crypts to the sky, each step a lord's skull set aflame. In the capital, Marguerite Tyrell hosted a midsummer feast beneath lanterns of gold glass. Lords danced, minstrels plucked harps, but Tywin slipped away to the Tower of the Hand, meeting a shadow in hooded cloak. Bolton marches. The shadow rasped. Greyjoy raids distract the wolf, strike Moat Caelan, sever the north. Tywin's eyes shone. Yet before coin changed hands, Jaime stepped from darkness. "Father," he said, hand on pommel, "the last king died for secret daggers. Have we learned nothing?" Tywin's cheeks flushed lion crimson. "This realm thrives on forethought, or chokes on it," Jaime retorted. He turned on heel, golden cloak swishing. The hooded shadow melted into stairwell gloom. Tywin's ambitions curdled. From a window ledge, Varys listened, breath shallow. He scuttled below to scratch new notes. Lion's cub grows conscience. Father bleeds plots. By first frost of New Year, the walkers reached the shore of the Bay of Seals. They waded into surf, ice hardening where water lapped their shins. At their backs lumbered mammoths frozen in crystal armor. Tusks rimed white. Mormont's men watched from bluffs, hearts hammering. Thingol Walker raised a sword, lashes of sapphire crackling along its edge. It pointed south. The host turned. Mormont rode hard for Winterfell, obsidian arrowheads swaying in quiver. He met Ned beneath the battlements. 2,000, perhaps more, he rasped. They march not like raiders, like an army. Ned clenched fist. "Then we fight as an army," Dispatch riders to Moat Cailin, White Harbor, the Dreadfort, even Bolton must choose life. Mormont's eyes hardened. And what of the south? Ravens fly now. Ned lifted gaze toward the comet burning still on horizon, tail trailing across stars like a promise or ultimatum. Pray they believe before unreasoning frost proves us sane. In King's Landing, the small council at last released Wildfire store. Tyrion directed barrels into reinforced casks lined with lead. 12 black-hulled ships were loaded under darkness, their names scrapped for symbols of flame. Among them, the Stormwind carried Tyrion himself, and a cadre of pyromancers wearing green goggles. They slipped from Blackwater at new moon, hugging coasts north. Any ship foundered, the narrow sea would glow as corruption purged by dragon's breath. Daenerys watched from a balcony, tossing petals that caught in updraft before settling on marble like scattered embers. Flame sails to kiss ice, she whispered, not sure where the words came from. Behind her, Rhaella shivered despite muffling furs, eering echo of dead brother's prophecy. The dragon must have 3 heads. She clutched both of her daughter's small hands. On the 4th day out, the stormwind struck reefs near Skagos. Water poured through seams, hissed against wildfire casks. Tyrion ordered pumps manned, but sea pressed relentless. He faced a choice. Scuttle here where cold currents might mute the blast, or risk detonation near shore settlements. He chose scuttle. The crew scrambled into longboats while Tyrion, waist deep, hacked the main hold supports. Green fire licked leaking seams. He dove into frigid foam, a heartbeat before ship erupted. A geyser of emerald flame, splitting night sky, painting glaciers in sickly jade. Whites on distant headlands shrieked, soundless yet felt in marrow, stumbling as light seared their senses. Walker captains knelt, ice swords raised to dark heavens in mute fury. Tyrion surfaced gasping, beard coated in slush, watching the unnatural dawn fade. He did not know if sacrifice bought time, but hope. From shore, a direwolf's howl rolled, a long, mournful note carried by Icewind. Tyrion shuddered. Back in the capital, word of the blast arrived via raven whose feathers showed faint green tinge. Pycelle sniffed, claiming wildfire folly proven. Robert roared that Tyrion had guts fit for legend. Tywin sat stony-faced, mask of indifference hiding terror for his son. Varys wondered what else might burn. That night, Margaery found Daenerys staring at the comet. "A sword for giants," the little princess murmured. "A sword for you," Margaery teased. "No," the girl said. "Mine is still inside. It's waiting." Margaery brushed silver hair. "One day the sword will know its wielder. Until then, keep it safe." On Winterfell's ramparts, Ned received news of wildfire burst. He studied the glowing horizon, an afterglow pulsing north. He turned to Robb. "Fire answers ice," he said. "Now men must answer too." Horns blew across the courtyard. Banners lifted. Direwolf, Merman, Flayed Man, all called to assemble. As soldiers mustered, snowflakes spiraled down, sparkling briefly in torchlight before vanishing on warm skin. And somewhere beyond the trees, blue eyes opened in darkness, reflecting emerald shimmer of a sunless dawn. The tale would stretch years yet, through sieges at Moat Cailin, through crimson fields watered by both Walker frost and wildfire's green tears, through hearts tested, alliances broken, and a young girl learning dragon song among the ashes of her father's drink. But for this hour, the realm still breathed. Inhale of fragile hope, exhale of steel resolve, and the wall, ancient and immense, stood waiting, torches guttering in bitter wind, holding its silent vigil until dawn, or doom would paint its icy crown in hues unknown. Thus, the watch was not ended, only handed from old bones to young blood. From blind king to bright child, from warmth fading to flame yet unkindled. And though night pressed its black weight upon the land, Westeros stood, shivering, defiant, alive.